Good evening, everyone. Well, it's certainly a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to have met Angela and finally be here at this beautiful place. It is a beautiful day. I hope that I can do some justice to what we're going to talk about. Today we're going to talk about one writer who had a great impact in the literature, the medieval times literature. But not only that, his works, as we read his works, we can learn so much in light of the Spiritist doctrine. Once we read Dante's work, and especially today we talk about the Divine Comedy, and we read it after we've been studying the Spiritist doctrine, we'll have a whole different view on his works. And we'll see that all those lights were there long before Kardec's codification. So some people say, why study the classics? Why study literature outside of, let's put the 5 Spiritist books and the major works? Because Spiritism has always been there. We only codified in 1865 and thereafter, but it's always been there. So if we go back and we read all these classics that are just they didn't get written for nothing. There's so much knowledge, and there's precious, abundant teachings that we can relate in Spiritism. So I think it's important for us to go a little bit outside our comfort zone and try to get all that knowledge that have been written by these great masters, these geniuses of the literature of all times. So today I had picked Dante Alighieri, but not just Dante. At first I thought about doing a lecture only on Dante's work. But then, as we all know, Luiz, we figured why not compare? And why not pick just one book and try to do a little bit of comparison between one and the other? So what we're going to talk about today is Dante's Hell, which is 1/3 of his book, which is called the Divine Comedy. So he does go, let's say, to hell, and then he relates that to us, what he saw. And then we have, on the other half of the lecture, Luiz's Umbral. So we have also that knowledge from Nosso Lar, the spiritual journey, from Luiz, and we can compare a little bit one with the other. Here we have Dante, where the Catholic Church was prevalent in the Middle Ages, and then we have Luiz, where Spiritism was just blossoming, and our, not just our culture, but in France, everywhere. So let's compare what we can learn about these two places. And I hope I can do a little justice, because we're talking about the Divine Comedy, which is a book that took over 10 years for him to write, and I'll try to make it into half an hour. So I suggest everybody does read it, especially the hell part of it. There's hell, purgatory, and paradise. But I personally like purgatory, but we're talking about hell today. And of course, Nosso Lar is essential for anybody that wants to know more about Spiritist doctrine. So we're going to start with, all right, I'll get out of the way. Okay, so let's start with the word itself, hell and umbral. What does it mean? Well, we know that hell comes from translations, in the English language, but the word that we see mostly in this literature, especially in Dante's, as well as Luiz, is Infernos, which is the Latin word for hell. Now that word, we'd be surprised that it's not found in the Bible at all, the word Infernos. And we think that, Infernos or Inferno is really that place where, there's the little devils with the horns and the forks and all that fire, But that's really a made up along the times, especially when the Bible got translated into the Vulgata Latina, which was the Latin words over 300 years after Christ has died. So we had all those translations throughout all times, from the old Hebrew to Hebrew to Greek to Aramaic, and then to Latin, and then it goes to German and all the other languages, and then we make it to English. So it's important for us to know why the word Infernos. What does it mean? So we're going to start with the Latin word pre-Christian Infernos. It just means low places, infernal, under something. So we're going to see that the Latin Infernos is the same word that the Greek used for Hades, which is a word encountered in the Bible, as well as the Hebrew word for Sheol, which all corresponds to the same infernos, where it was a place where the souls went. So there was no specifics on who were these souls. Some were said to be souls of people that rebelled against God. Some were souls that were just mean. Some were souls that were very ill. But these souls had to go somewhere. So the Greeks nominated this place, again, Hades and Sheol in Hebrew. And then we have Infernos, which is in the Latino Inferno, which is under against something. So we think that if something is under and these souls go under, this place is going to probably smell. It's going to be hot. It's going to be covered up, so it'll be claustrophobic. So all the sense of this kind of place already gives us an image that this place must be hell, in our own sense of it can be a good place. So that's where the word hell. And there is another word also, Gehenna, also comes up in the Bible, where we don't have to read it, but Gehenna, at one point Jesus said that the souls could go to this place, Gehenna, which was a town. It was a place outside of Jerusalem. And this is a place where children were sacrificed, and they were burnt, a lot through four false gods. Namak was one of the gods. So this place was full of fire and sacrificial givings, and it was denominated Gehenna, also given into, it was a hellish place outside of Jerusalem. So we're going to see these four words, not inferno, I'm sorry, these three words come up in the Bible, but not the word hell, of course, because it's in English, and not the word infernos, because that was 300 years after Jesus has died. So the word umbral. Now, Andre Luiz is amazing, because before him, there was no word umbral to describe the spiritual realm. We had different spheres, different places, different vibrational places, outside of the earth, but we didn't have where does it begin, where does it end, where does this new world begins, where it's so much lighter and peaceful. So Andre Luiz comes and he keys the word umbral, where is very close to what we have learned about the word hell that we were talking about before. If we're going to look into the Hades, the Sheol, the Infernos, it's a place of, again, we'll just read. Sometimes I don't read, I just talk, but we can read. So it's a portal, a door, an entrance, and this is from the dictionary. A state of mind or transient place after death. So it's not a final destination, it's a through, and we can't really skip this place. I guess, I can't say for all, but I certainly have been there, I'm sure, and I'm going again, so I don't think I'll have a pass to bypass Umbral and just go to the next level. So it's important for us to know, what are the different levels of this place? Where is this? Shouldn't we be concerned and at least read up while we can on our probabilities of where we're going? So at least we can better ourselves and say, ooh, maybe I can't skip the whole thing, but I can go to a lighter version of Umbral. So okay, so this is just quickly, and I'm sorry, this is in Portuguese, I did this lecture. This is just some of the passages that the different words appear. We have the first one, Sheol, and then Deuteronomy, Psalms, Proverbs, Isaiah. Then we have the word Hades, which is in Matthew's, Luke, and the Apocalypse of John. Gehenna we see in Matthew's, Mark, Luke, and, Tiago is James. So, it's a different name, but in English would be James. And then we have Tartaru as well, and Peter had mentioned that, but we're not going into that. So those are the words. In no time you see the word infernos or hell, but they all signify pretty much the same thing. Now, once we go to these places, once we go to this hell or umbral, what determines the duration of the suffering of the guilty? How long are we going to be there? This is in a question 1004 of the Book of the Spirits. So Kardec asked, what determines this? How long am I going to stay at this place? And the spirits, in their infinite wisdom, say, the length of times required for his amelioration, that means the time it takes for you to get better, it's really up to you. A spirit's state of suffering or of happiness depends on the time it takes him to become better again, in proportion as he progresses and his sentiments become purified. His sufferings diminish and change their nature. So we all have hope, and we can all strive for better and to lessen this time that we'll spend in Umbral or in hell, denominated by Dante. And in heaven and hell, from Kardec, the spirits always say, the doctrine of eternal punishment, like that of a physical hell, was useful, while the intellectual and more backwardness of mankind required that they should be held in check by the fear of incurring the doom, thus help us before their imagination. So the more we grow in our concept, we need less and less of this physical fire, this place that really causes us fear. And that's the beauty of, the Spiritist doctrine. We don't need so much, we don't believe on this God of fear. We start believing in this God of love, on this God of, no, you're not condemned to eternity in hell because of maybe a 30-year life that you've done wrong. On the opposite, he says, I want you to learn. I love you so much that I want you to give you more opportunities. And I want you to see what you have done for you to redeem yourself, but not to show it to me, for you to become a better person, for you to enjoy having all this goodness inside of you. So that's the beauty of believing in a God of love instead of believing in a God of fear. Then we have, okay. So we do know that a spirit cannot suffer eternally. That would go against anything that calls us to our common sense. Anyone that says, do we believe in this eternal, fire? Do we believe in anything eternal? We have to question that. And now we can use our sense of questioning. We don't have to be so fearful to ask the authorities, to ask the churches, to ask. Because at one time we couldn't ask, we couldn't read the Bible. We'll see. Not that long ago, it was very hard to get a Bible, for you to do your own translation, let's say like that, for you to do your own meaning into it, and for you to say how was this book formed? Which that'll be another lecture on the whole formation of the Bible. But so now we're going to ask. We'll start with, who was Dante Alighieri? Now, this man with the skinny face, he was a great man. He was really, Botticelli and a lot of the great masters afterwards would call him the ultimate genius of his era. He was right there at the end of the medieval times, what we call the Dark Ages back then. Now we're going to see that the Dark Ages had a lot of knowledge there. There was a lot of enlightenment even on the Middle Ages. We'll start with Francis of Assisi, in the 1200s, and we'll see Dante's around the same time. So we have to kind of put it to the side, this whole thing that the Middle Ages were really a period of no knowledge, of nothing really happening. If we go through the literature, we're going to see that there's a lot going on there, especially in light of what we know today in Spiritism. So Dante Alighieri, he was, again, a genius. He was a poet, and he was born in 1265. They believe it was in May of 1265. And as a little boy, he went to school, but most of his education was self-taught. He was also a doctor, a pharmacist, so we know that his level of intelligence was very profound. He knew things that nobody knows. How could he have known all of that? One of his favorite authors was Virgilius, who was a Latin writer, way back then, and he really appreciated all of his work. He also admired Aristotle. Was one of the big figures that a lot of things, Thomas of Aquinas as well. So he was born in 1265, and he grows up. When he was 9 years old, he sees this girl, and he immediately falls in love. Her name was Beatrice. She was a year younger than her. And he sees this girl, and she causes this impact. And now we're going to see, like these days, you know, people that just see each other, and there's something so grand. No words were ever exchanged between these two figures, but that directed Dante's life forever, meeting this girl for a little period of time. So they meet, but she was given in marriage when she was 12 years old, which was very common back there, to some wealthy man. And he also was promised in marriage to Gema, which was another lady, and which he married. But he never forgets her, this girl, Beatrice. And he goes on, he grows. Now, Dante was also a member of the military. He was born in Florence, beautiful, beautiful city. So he was born and he loved Florence. So he was, you know, he did everything for his town. He was a member of the military. He was the member of the council. He wanted to fight for his beautiful city, for it to become grand. And he starts participating more and more. Now, back then, there was almost a lot of battles going on. There was a lot of takeovers, you know, of towns. It happens still, right? But in Florence, they had these two parties. They had the Guelphs, which were these people that, let's put the Republicans and the Democrats, but we're not going into politics. We're just saying two very different points of views. But the Guelphs was this part that really was with the Pope. And the Ghibellines, which was another party, let's say it like that, were very into the imperial. So we had a little bit of church and state going on here, and who's going to take over and all of that. So he was a member of the council, and he was called to go to Rome and to speak with the Pope and to, you know, with the council, and to kind of negotiate things and to talk things out and kind of bring peace into the situation. And he goes to the Pope just about 1300, the year. So he goes to the Pope, and when he's out, there was a big rebellion in Florence. And this big rebellion brings the city into a whole new ownership, let's say like that, which was not favorable to Dante. So when he's there, he learns that a lot of his political friends betrayed him. There was a lot of things going on, that people that he thought were their friends. And making a long story short, he can't return anymore to Rome. Now he's in exile to Florence. Now he's in Rome and he's exiled. So now his family abandons him. He's got Gema, which he's married to, and he's got 4 children. He never once wrote about them, by the way. And he just leaves them. Not leaves them, he can't go back. He would be put to death by fire. And at the same time, his beloved town, his family, his friends, all of that is in Florence. But now he's going to stay in Rome. And he's going to have to start a new life. So Dante starts to see his life. He falls into this depression. He starts getting deeply saddened. He starts to write more and more. By then, he already wrote the La Vita Nuova, which is the new life, which is a beautiful poem to Beatrice, all about her. And now he's starting to question more things. He's starting to look at the spirituality. He's starting to go and dig deep inside and see, what is this meaning? Why did I do all this? Why am I here in this sadness? Why am I here so lost? So he starts questioning himself, all of these questions. And And then he decides to write about it. And he decides that he needs to do something about the sadness. He's very troubled. And now that's why we're going to start looking into Spiritism and what can we look into what Dante is going through there. Now we know about his life a little bit. And now that he's into this depression phase, he starts to write this book. And it's a poem, really. And it's called The Divine Comedy. First of all, the book was called The Comedy. And not because it was a comedy and funny, because in Italian, when we go to an opera, what is an opera usually? A tragedy, right? A tragedia. And a commedia was something that would end happy. So it's the opposite of a tragedia. So the word of this book, the title of this book was La Commedia, which was something, a story that ended with a happy ending, instead of the tragedia. Later on, it was changed to the Divine Comedy. But anyway, so he starts to write his book, and we have 3 main characters. First, we have Beatrice. Now, Beatrice, this love that he never talked about, by the way, she died when she was 20. So there was no hope anymore of Dante ever seeing her again, his great love. So she dies and she goes to heaven. Then we have Dante, Beatrice being called from God to go help Dante through this phase of depression, to come from heaven, but she couldn't get to him. Now we start kind of thinking about spiritism. Can someone so high up there, and we see in Renuncia, we see in a lot of different books, from Chico Xavier, she really can't get to him because he's so low. Let's say he's so us. And when I say us, I mean me. I don't know any of you. You could be up there and I have no idea. But she really can't get to this sphere where Dante is. So Beatrice from heaven sends his friend who has passed away called Virgil. Now, Virgil was a former poet, and he lives in limbo. He lives not quite in hell, but he died. He wasn't a Christian. He wasn't baptized. He didn't do anything good, nothing really bad. So he was just outside of hell. Let's say just one little leg in there, but not really. So Beatrice comes to him and asks Virgil to guide Dante through all of these different places so he can see that Dante as well could be reunited with Beatrice. Because we can see that maybe he was on the verge of doing something very bad to himself. So he has that interception where, wait, someone is here. Someone is here to help you, to get you out of this depression. And how many of us have been through a phase in their lives and maybe we would have thought, there's no hope. There's nothing. And somebody just shows up. Somebody just says something that gives you that's all you needed, that word. So we're going to see that with Dante. And this somebody was, I do this all the time. I barely use the notes. And Dante sends Virgil, and Virgil will guide them through this place until he reunites with Beatrice. So he knows that there's hope for him, that he can't just give up. So Dante, he's going to be the narrator, but we're going to find out something interesting now if we look from the Spiritism optic. How many of us believe that we can, go out of our bodies without dying and visit different places, different realms? Could it be in our sleep? It could be still when we're automatically doing something, we can be someplace else as well. So we can our souls can very well travel to these places. In some places we need guidance. We can't just wander around. There's the very suggestion for everybody to pray at night, because we're so much more open to, who's going to be there waiting for us to just fall asleep and say, hey, come on. Sometimes we wake up and we're beat up and we say, I think oh my God, where was I? It seems like I was at a party. Well, probably you were, and my body aches. And we can see there the sexual dreams, all of these things that, we wake up and we have these reminiscences of where we've been. And then we can wake up and say, whoa, maybe I was there, So that's where we have to look now with those eyes. Let's not so easily believe that he was just a narrator in this book, but maybe he was taken there. So this is where it starts, and he's, obviously Beatrice is the inspiration for all of this work. So again, Dante starts, he's in this depression, and we can see this very close to the beginning of his book. He finds himself in this forest, and it's this dark forest. It's kind of like when we describe a huge depression. It's this darkness. It's this lined with trees, and the more I run, I can't reach anywhere. I can't go anywhere. I'm just stuck. So Dante starts trying to get out of this place, but he can't. He's encountered by these three animals: a leopard, a she-wolf, and a lion, which I'm not going into it, but it's very interesting for you guys to research what it means. But these three things prevent them from moving out of this forest. So just a minute, he's about to give up. He's about to say, forget it. Virgil appears. So now we see, it's a little dark, but we have Dante in red, and Virgil. Usually he's sometimes in blue or white. But we see him and he says, wait, I was sent from heaven, from Beatrice. And I want to show you that there is hope. I want to show you what you're going through, what all the humans go through. I want to show you what sin is, or I want to show you a better way for you to get there. But you have to do this inner work in yourself to get there. So let's start by taking a trip, through these places, and I'll show you where your beloved is. So if everyone is ready, we'll fasten our seatbelts, and we're going to go a little bit on a trip to hell. So we're going there. Okay, maybe we won't go to hell. Okay, so before we go to hell, we can see this, which was interesting. What would this be in Andre Luiz's eyes? The Umbral, that passage, this place, this, it's almost like a threshold. So we see him we see Virgil showing Dante and saying, look, this is where we're going now. Once we go past here, you can't turn around. We're going all the way. So this is what they call the hell's vestibule, or anti-hell, that they call. And we can see that Dante says, those who lived a life but lived it with no blame and no praise. This is a place where, he's going into limbo, which is just past that. So limbo is a place where you haven't really done anything. And Dante detested that. Dante just said, those people, the lectures, the reading said about the workers, the people that really don't do much, the ones that have goodwill, but they really don't have the will to do it. They always want to, I want to come and help Angie. I really want to help, on a charity fund. Those are goodwill. We all have goodwill. We want to do things. But few are those who actually have the will and who will show up, who will say, Angie, the center I need to clean up, and whoever does the cleaning is fantastic, but we need to clean, we need to do things, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to volunteer. At Good Harvest, at our place, we have a rule in the house that we say, opinions are welcome as long as you're going to be the first one to volunteer to be in it. So everybody can get, because we have those architectural spiritists that come in and make these great projects, but for somebody else to do it, So, and that's one thing we have, and we say everybody can give opinions. Everybody here is welcome to say where the podium should be and this, but are you going to move the podium? Are you going to do this? And then all of a sudden people are like, maybe we should leave it how it is. But Dante really didn't like this very much. And we're going to see this in, so this is a place that was not very favorable to Dante. Huh?
No, just trying to arrow.
Okay. So in Revelations in the Bible, we see John, when he wrote these visions that he had, during his exile in Patmos Island. And one of them says, I know your deeds. This is God saying, that's what John saw. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth. Now this is God. This is very strong. God is saying this to his children that are in this place. And we're seeing here with Dante, in this limbo place. Listen, you are one of those people that, you really like something, but you don't want to do anything about that. You are an activist, maybe on abortion or something, and then you're doing something about it. Or maybe you're an activist on, against the death penalty or whatever it is, and you really throw yourself into that. And that's admirable to Dante, and that's admirable to God, But those who are just quiet, they're very much, I'm not going to opinionate, because that's the easy way out. When we don't take a position, we are choosing a position of neutrality, of doing nothing, of making no difference at all. Because it's better, we see Paul of Tarsus, when he was the biggest persecutor of Christ. And Christ said, don't worry about it. He is the biggest persecutor, but he's also going to be my best man, So sometimes when we have someone who maybe they do everything kind of, not the right way, but they really try and they're doing something, the minute that conscience, that moment where something clicks and they say, I'm doing wrong, they're also the best candidates to turn around and make it all right and really be the best advocate. So Dante and God, according to John, will both be very close on that. They say, I'd rather have someone do the wrong thing, but in their belief they're doing it right, but they're doing something, than the ones that don't do anything. The ones that just, I'm just going through life, and I'm not going to try anything, So that's the one place that we begin our journey. Then we have, in regards to that, we have Kardec. Oops. Yeah. Nope. Okay. I think I went. So we have 3 great figures there. And they're all saying basically the same thing. Oh, there it is. I'll just get closer, that's all. First we have Kardec saying, no, it is necessary for each to have done also good to the utmost limits of his ability. For each of you will have to answer not only for all the evil that he has done, but also for all the good which he has failed to do. That's on the Spirit's Book, question 642. And we're going to see Dante saying, the darkest place in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in time of crisis. And then we have Martin Luther King Jr. here, saying very similar. The greatest tragedy is not the brutality of the evil people, but rather the silence of the good people. And it varies a little bit on whoever's translation. But we all come to these 3 people saying basically the same thing. When you do nothing, you're going to answer for that, because you left something good that could have been done, and you did nothing about it. So it's very, very interesting on this place in hell. Just watch, now it's going to work beautifully. Nope. It's probably my aim.
No, our system is
okay, I went back. Okay, so now we're going to this hell, and we're just going to explain a little bit briefly on what Dante says. Now he goes to this vestibule, this limbo place, and he starts to go in through these to the center of the earth. Back in the day, it was believed that Lucifer was fallen into the center of earth through Jerusalem, which was the promised land. So Lucifer came right from Jerusalem, right into the center of earth, and that's where the deepest, darkest place one's soul could be was in the very center of the earth. So here we see, Lucifer in the very, let's imagine this as the earth, and then we start going down and down, down until we get there. And the darker the secrets get, the very, I guess their brutality, then the deeper you are on the earth, according to Dante. So we'll see these little layers here. So now we're going to talk very briefly about a little bit of each layer. Now, the layers are divided into 9 parts. The first 3 parts, it's very important for us to know this because in Spiritism we talk about this a lot. The first 3 layers of hell has a lot to do with incontinence. It has to do a lot with our instincts, those sins of the flesh, the sins that we kind of just go with instant gratification, and we don't think much about it. Then the 4th, 5th, and 6th sin has a little bit more to do now with violence, with things that are a little bit more thoughtful, more, now you're interfering in people's lives more directly. And the last 3 sins has to do with intellect. Those sins that you plan to do something evil, you plan to betray someone. So you see those 3 things, and we learn a lot about those in Spiritism, about the instincts, the sensations, and then for you to plan something out, for you to really know what you're doing, your responsibility on when you know you're doing something wrong. So we start with limbo, and that's where Virgil lives. Then we go down to the second circle of hell, which is lust. And those are the passions of the flesh. And he sees Helena of Troy, he sees Cleopatra, he sees a few figures there. And Dante was very, he was an interesting character because he would name names. He was a whistleblower. He would not just, see someone there. Can you imagine we go when we dream tonight and then we see somebody we know here you know, maybe on the 6th level of hell. And then we wake up and say, oh, I saw you there, you know, that's, you know. So Dante took a lot of heat from naming names. I mean, he saw a few popes, he saw a few very interesting characters there, and he would come back and write about it and kind of just put his chest out there and say, come on, I saw you there, you know, that's where they are, their souls are in there. So he was going against a lot of, especially, you know, the whole force of the Catholic Church back then. Then we go to the 3rd circle, which is the gluttons. Now here we think immediately of food, but not necessarily food, anything in excess. Now let's think about alcohol. Let's think about anything we do that our body already says enough, but we continue to do it. So, and also not just, you know, he sees a few people, he sees one character specifically that this person has a form of a hog. And after a while, he realized it's one of his, you know, people that he knew on earth that would overeat. And he actually took a form of this animal. And now we see, you know, the perispirit, you know, our plasticity and how we can actually, you know, modify the way we are in the spirit world. So, you know, he sees this character as a pig, and then, you know, in this man's mind, he lived as one. So, you know, when we see someone that has passed away, maybe, you know, the mediums or someone in a dream, and they say, well, my mother, you know, she passed away and I saw her and it was so real, but she looked so young in the dream, you know, and we know that we have this perispirit has this placidity to come and show herself as she wishes you to see her and remember her. And we see this with Emmanuel for Chico Xavier, who had many lives, but preferred to see, to show himself at this Roman emperor, you know, way back when, and he's always coming into Chico as the Roman emperor. Then we go into greed, the 4th level of hell. Now, greed is something that, you know, one of those things that we really try to let go. Now, the people that would go there are either the greedy people or the people that just hoard it. You know, the people that hoard it or the people that waste it. So let's think about not just the greed, people that want everything for themselves, you know, but also they have so much that they just let it go. You know, I have a thing with wasteful things, you know, like food, anything. I kind of like, no, we can still, you know, make a plate for tomorrow, and we can still, because it just hurts to see things go to waste. And Chico would say, anything that you waste, somebody else needs that. So when you start thinking of Chico and that word, you know, just saying every time you're wasteful, it's exactly what somebody else needs. So we think of all this balance that, you know, am I part of this? And then the hoarders. And it's interesting because in greed, he would see the souls carrying these boulders, and they wouldn't put it down because it was theirs, you know, so they got these big rocks and they're just holding it because they're afraid somebody else would come and get their boulder. But the other person couldn't possibly get their boulder because they already have one that they couldn't even let go. But they wouldn't even put it down. So they're tired in carrying this, but their whole feeling of, I need more, I can't, somebody else might take it, it was their hell, it was their torture. And how many times we do that? That we're so afraid of, oh, maybe, you know, I'll need this later. And this later doesn't come, and we still could have just passed this to someone who needs it now. So all these hell things, and we could do, you know, again, a lecture just on these levels of hell and compare how we fit into these levels. After that, we go into anger. And their sin was to just be angry. Their hell was just being angry. It's interesting because, you know, everyone has a different thing that happens, and, you know, you got to go to the literature to get the details. But the anger one is interesting because it's just everybody being angry at everybody. And that was enough. Dante didn't have to think, you know, he was just saying, well, that's hell enough to just be angry, to have that feeling of anger. And we're going to see that's one of the things even André Luiz, when he had a little bit of anger in him when he was already in Nosso Lar, and when he comes back and sees his wife now married, remarried, and he starts bringing these feelings of a little angry, a little jealousy, and immediately he brings himself into this umbral again, this region of hell. So we're going to see here and compare these two and see that it's really inside of us. We don't have to go to this place. Every time that we're angry, we're in hell. Every time that we're greedy and we're carrying more than we can handle, we're in hell, because that's hell to carry more than what you can handle, to have to preoccupy every instant of your time thinking of your possessions. You know, every time that you overeat, what happens to your body? Immediately you feel ill. It's like, oh, I'm in hell, I need antacid. You know, and now they make the antacids before you even go out to eat. So, you know, like we're creating these things instead of saying maybe you just shouldn't eat so much. And, you know, we understand everybody has their own things. And we can say the gluttony, but we can talk about jealousy. We can talk about bad-mouthing. That's all a level of different things that we immediately feel bad about. So everything that we feel, lust, yeah, we can go and have an affair and not give much thought, but we have to live with that. We have to have that in our minds, reminding us, pounding on our heads of what we have done. How much did I hurt somebody? Maybe they don't even know that they were hurt, but I know I hurt them. You know, so all of these are levels of hell that we go through. How many times do we go back and forth to these places? Some days in one day, we can go to 2, 3 levels of hell and come back. You know, so it's important for us to think, where is hell? You know, I'm living in it all the time. Every time that I do something against God's law, I'm going to hell. Then we go into heresy. And he sees a lot of the church people there. We see a lot of the war makers. He sees, and he names names again. You know, Dante is very interesting on naming a lot of historical people and those which there's really no time for. But he does see, you know, a lot of people in heresy and this level of hell. And then he goes into the deepest, which was betrayal, fraud. Dante, that's where he sees Lucifer. And by the way, Lucifer there, I'll tell you who he sees. He sees not Julius Caesar's, the people that betrayed Julius Caesar, Brutus, and I forgot the other's name. And then he sees Cain, which, you know, killed Abel. And he also sees Judas Iscariotes, which was, you know, Judas. But we know that he's not there through different literatures. We know Judas is fine, and he's already repented himself, and we're going to see his reincarnations after. But he sees the fraud, and he hates fraud. He hates these people that betray others, because now they're using intellect. Now they're using their minds to manipulate. They're using their knowledge. And if you think about it, when he went to Rome and all his friends betrayed him, you know, maybe he has a little place there to really hate this. And he says, I'd rather you do something, but do it and speak about it. Don't do things behind your back. So he really doesn't like this fraud. So he goes through hell, and he sees, and he learns a lot about himself. He learns how, he also sees on one of these levels, they're the suicides, the people that have done against themselves. And he sees these people, their souls would be just thrown in this hellish place, and they would just kind of germinate and become trees, like these woods. And they wouldn't have any choices on how their body would look like. They would just be tree stumps and on that position forever. And also these little birds would come and nip at them all the time. And so he makes this a very illustrative, you know, figure. And we're going to learn about this, you know, with the suicides, what we do to ourselves, and how our bodies, after we have to reincarnate, will have to also adjust to what we have done to it. So there's a lot of things we can relate to it. Oh, good. So here we have, again, you know, that's the most ninth circle of hell, and that's where Lucifer is. And by the way, in his literature, that this level of hell is very cold. It's icy. And people get upside down when they go into this ice, and they're just frozen there because their deeds were so terrible, and they're just frozen in ice. So when we say that, you know, when hell freezes over, you know, maybe we know a little bit about where this might have came from. Although this idea had predated Dante's idea as well. But then we see Kardec, and something interesting that he says. On the Spirit's book, question 637, it says, when a savage, yielding to his instinctive desire, feeds on human flesh, is he guilty in so doing? And the spirits will say, I have said that the essence of evil is in the will. Therefore, a man is more or less guilty according to his light. Again, just to close that, you know, so are we going to hell? Are we going to this terrible place, this Umbral? if we knew what we were doing, or do I have more responsibility if I know what I'm doing? You know, so that it brings this question. It's very deep that we have. And now that we study the Spiritist doctrine, we have to say we're no better than anybody else, than any other religion. But we have a big responsibility, because we might have a little bit of an advantage of knowing that we're going to be punished according to our will, to our knowledge. So if you know a little bit more of the wrong that you're doing, there is no excuse. There is no saying in, well, this book says that I should do this. Or maybe, you know, the pastor, the priest absolved me, and now I'm okay. If they believe, if the people, and I grew up Catholic and I love the Catholic Church, but if I believe that if I repent and if I'm given the forgiveness, I'm okay, then I'm going to have less responsibility, yes, because I do believe that. But if I now believe as a Spiritism that nobody really can absolve me, I'm going to have to come back and I'm going to have to repair all these wrongs, then maybe I'll think even more about it, of what I'm doing. And then André Luiz, we're going to talk a lot less about André Luiz because I'm sure most of us know a lot more about him. And again, he was obviously, hopefully everybody has read Astral City, A Spiritual Journey, or Nosso Lar. And he was a doctor. He was a well-known doctor. He did a lot of work. It is believed that he was the reincarnation of Carlos Chagas. Well, he was Carlos Chagas when he was here. And that's sometimes arguable. So we leave it up to everybody. I don't like controversies sometimes. So everybody can read. You know, this is Valdo Vieira, who was a medium as well. He worked with Chico Xavier. And he's the one that has presented us with this information. But regardless who he was, that's not so important. It's important that he was a doctor, and he lived in this world doing worldly things. Maybe he was one of those that Dante didn't like too much. Not really hot, not really cold. He kind of just did what he was supposed to do. He worked. He was a doctor. He went to work. He did what he had to work. He did what he had to do, and he went home. And a lot of times we do that. And we think maybe our jobs don't mean that much, or maybe, oh, all I do is clean, or all I do. But do you do to the best that you can do? And that's the whole point. Do you really go that extra mile? You know, and we don't see that André Luiz did that when he was here. He did, and then he spent a lot of time with, you know, with the women, with the drinking, and with the smoking, and maybe a lot of things that, you know, we get information from. But so he also did a lot of harm to his body that way. So when he dies, André Luiz wakes up in this place, which he's confused. What is this place? And it's a very dark place, very much like Dante's Inferno, very much like some of the levels there. And André Luiz he hears all this time voices saying, suicide, suicide, you're a suicide. And he hears this in his head, and his question is, why? Why am I a suicide? Why am I being called this? Why am I here? And André Luiz spent about 8 years in this place. So we can see us, we don't need to be a doctor actually, we got to get this thought out of our minds that we need to be something according to what men believe that is important. Being important is very different than being famous. You can be a very important person doing something very simple, but you're important. Or you can be very famous and not have any importance. How many people are very famous because, I don't know, they can show their skin, so they become famous. But they're not really important. They're not doing any impact. They're not doing anything. And some people are extremely important. They're passing knowledge in some schools. And some schools, my brother just went to Haiti to build orphanages. And he'll kill me if I say that, because he's like, I don't want anybody to know this. And he was there working and with an axe and building and teaching. And my brother is evangelical. And he's praying to these kids and to all this. And he's dirty every day and hot. And, and I look at it and I'm like, that's important, that you're doing important work. I said, don't you ever think that, holding that construction stuff and doing that's important. Getting on a microphone and, talking about meaningless things, and maybe you're on TV, that's really not important. That's just fame. So anyway, so he's a suicide. He's deemed a suicide because, again, heaven and hell, in the book, we're going to see that suicide is not only the voluntary act that produces instant death, but every act consciously to hasten the extinction of vital forces. Now, the key word here is consciously. Sometimes we do things we're kind of like on a, just an auto mode. We don't think too much. But the minute, again, that we become conscious of what we're doing, that's where responsibility starts weighing in. And that, again, if we went back to those, Dante and Kardec and Martin Luther King Jr., we'll see that when we silence and when we do things just going through the motions, we really don't, it doesn't mean so much. We need to do something a little bit more. And just, briefly here, we'll see the different places, and we say Umbral then, Dante shows these 9 levels of hell. Does Umbral have levels? And then we're going to compare. Yes, it does. It actually does. We'll see the star over here as the Nosso Lar being a colony. Now, Nosso Lar is in Umbral still. It's almost getting out already, It's already on the more upper spheres. But it's still in Umbral. So when we die and we say, I want to go to Umbral, I want to go to Nosso Lar, that's where I want to go, that's my final destination. We should remember, no, that's still in Umbral. You want to go beyond that, So that's just a pit stop. Just like, it's like an embassy, in a place of a lot of pain. Just like Spiritist centers are embassies, I like to say that too. It's embassies for the spirits. Because it's a lot of work, a lot of spiritual work are done in these little embassies, here on earth. So, again, that's the book. And we see, just like Virgil rescues Dante out of that thought, we see Clarence, I guess it would be Clarence, would come into Umbral, and his mother was there the whole time as well, but he comes to rescue as well when Andre Luiz is tired and when he actually gives himself to, there's got to be something else, God help me. And how long do we go sometimes without saying a prayer? And actually saying, it's so much closer than I thought, and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm causing all this chaos in my life, and all I needed was a sincere prayer, and help would show up, So it's really nice for us to know that they're all around us. Help is all around us all the time, but they won't do anything. They won't interfere in our lives. We have our free will, but we also have the free will to call them to help us, and they will do it with all this love. So it's really interesting when we think that we're alone, and there is nothing better in sight for us to know that no, we're not alone at all. We're surrounded. The spiritual world is not there and we're here. Spiritual world is all around us. We're interacting nonstop. We're going to this hell and back all the time, but we're also going to heaven and back every time that we wish to do so. So Umbral is a region intended for the flushing away of negative mental residues. It is a sort of purgatorial zone where one gradually burns off the refuse of the bulk of illusions acquired after having degraded the sublime opportunity of an earthly life. So that kind of sums up, what I thought was really interesting. We'll pass a few things, and that's okay, we talked about. And again, now to finalize, just have 5 minutes, and I wanted to just get into that really quickly, is the book Heaven and Hell. That's another one that we can incorporate, and for us to understand Dante's work as well as Andre Luiz's place where he goes after he has passed. The 2 parts of the book, obviously, is the first half is the concepts, and we're going to see actually the works of Dante being cited in the Heaven and Hell. So we learn a little bit about what is hell through different religious organizations, to different faiths, to different places. And the second part of the book is the evocations, where Kardec and they would call on to these spirits, and some are happy spirits, some are very in a very sad place, but they come and they tell us directly what they're experiencing, depending on what their deeds were that they while they were incarnate. So we're just going to do 2 evocations, just for us to get an idea of, where these people were before. First, we see Auguste Michel, and he was a young man, wealthy. He was very absorbed into the sensual pleasures. Now, if we see that maybe in Dante's, he would be on that fourth circle of hell, that lust, that Dante would like to say. He wasn't really evil. He wasn't trying to do anything bad, but he was kind of wasteful, just kind of, hey, it's my time. It's all about me, So this is what, on April 6th, 1867, maybe? I forgot the date. But this is what he says. It is I who come again to entreat you to pray for me. You should have come to the place where my body was lying. Again, he's still so into the earthly things, he believed he's still in his coffin or wherever his body was. To beseech the Almighty to calm my sufferings. How I suffer. Oh, how I suffer. Go to my grave. You must go and pray to God, there to grant me forgiveness. If you do this, I shall be quieter, for I am constantly drawn back to the spot where I had been laid. So this is someone in their own hell, who's constantly, he just thinks about his place of where he lied after death, and he's there. He really can't leave. He's living this hell of attachment to worldly things. And we can see here that at least he realizes it. He's starting to suffer, and he's starting to ask for forgiveness. Just like that Andre Luiz's phase where he's like, please help me. And here he asks for prayers from us. And sometimes we say, well, I say a prayer for my mom, for my family, for this person, for world peace. But when we say prayers to these people that never get prayers, for the suicides, and it's so hard to pray, and sometimes according to what we think is wrong and right, to pedophiles, to suicide bombers, to all these souls. And sometimes we find it hard to pray for someone that's done awful things. But then we got to remember, the more they better themselves and they, let's say, attune themselves with the law of God, the better off the whole world will be, because we're in it. They're still here with us. So when we see Bin Laden and Saddam and all of that, and the world is all cheering and sending more hate to them, what is happening? We're just creating this umbral. We're just fortifying this umbral. And it's not going away, because as long as we create them. What did we learn about this regeneration world, where we're going from this level of world to this regeneration, this good, this much better place? How do we know we're there? How do we know? People always say, what year is this going to happen? Or, is it going to happen now? Is it 2012, 2019, now 2057? And there is a cue that the spirits tell us, when there's no more war. So when war is eradicated from earth is our cue that we're very close to this regeneration world. So whose job is to do this? It's really our job. We can't be waiting for them to come and end war. In the last one, we see Prince Yuran, a past Russian prince. This is someone that was, a very wealthy prince, but he was also a tyrant. He used his power to really, and we see this today. We see people to oppress others' beliefs. And then here's a question that, Kardec or whoever evoked him. Are you conscious of your faults? This is the first step towards amendment. And he answers, this conscious is an additional suffering. Look at how important that is. It's an additional suffering, because now I know what I did. For many spirits, suffering is almost physical, because being still influenced by the materiality of their last experience, they have no perception of moral sensations. So look how much weight the moral has. My spirit is now quite free from the influence of matter, but my moral perception has acquired all the honor of the sensations that are supposed to be physical. Do you think the perispirit feels fire when we talk about these flames? No, because it doesn't have any skin. It doesn't have the organs to feel the fire. But it's stored in our memory, what fire feels, what burning feels. Same thing with love and hate. If you think of someone you love right now and you close your eyes and you feel, your heart rate will beat differently. Your whole body sensations feel lighter because you're thinking of love. It's not because you're seeing the person. Maybe they don't even, are part anymore of this incarnate world. But your memory of that person brings you love. Same thing with hate. If I say, think of someone you hate, I hope nobody hates anybody, but somebody that, gets on your, under your skin. And you immediately, your heart starts racing. Your blood pressure goes up. You start sweating. These are things that happen physically. Not because this person is here, but because it's already engraved in your mind what this person represents. So same thing with fire. When we talk about eternal hell of fire, not because there's literal fire burning your skin, you don't have any skin anymore, but you still have the perception of how the burning is. So that's what the hell and umbral is, this engraving in our minds. And we can go back and forth all the times we want. And do you foresee the end to your sufferings? I know that they will not be eternal, but I will not foresee their end. I do not foresee their end. For that I must undergo a new trial. Again, a new incarnation. You can pass them. You can pass them. Nobody goes to hell or umbral for punishment, because the person goes to the place that best fits your spiritual vibration. So let's just think of what we're inviting into our spiritual vibration, and that will pretty much tell us where we're going. Reason is given to men to discern good and evil. That's Dante saying. And lastly, on question 621 by Kardec, he asks, and where is the law of God inscribed? How do we know? Where is this law? And the Spirit's answer, in your consciousness. So, question. When you think that, should I take this path or this path? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Just question your conscience. It'll tell you if it's right or wrong. Just give it time and really reflect on it. When we have a big decision to make, and we think, well, is this better for me or for everybody? That's when we know the sense of justice. Is this good for everyone? Then your conscience will give you the go-ahead. But the minute that you say, no, this is good for me, this will make me so much money, regardless who's going to hurt, then your conscience will tell you, that's not the right thing. I mean, we still sometimes do it, but we know we're going against our conscience, therefore against the laws of God. And that's the biography, all the books that I use for my research, and I want to thank you all.